climbs off all by itself. It does it itself. Okay?
Yeah, you're right there with me though.
Every time I open the hangar door to go flying, I realize that I'm one of the lucky guys doing something that I dreamt of as a kid.
I love to fly. It is. I learn something every time I fly, and I enjoy it. And to be able to fly a Mustang at my age is something very special. And not just a Mustang, say a Mustang painted like mine.
Do you realize that I've had 4 different airplanes, Old Crows, and there's 2 still up, 2 of them are still flying. One of them crashed and one got sold and is being repainted at the moment. But when I was able to fly those things, I don't know, it was a special event. I think you can imagine.
I tell my non-drinking friends, or my Baptist friends, that it's named after the most intelligent bird that flies in the sky, the crow. And that generally is recognized. The crow is a very cagey bird. But my drinking buddies all know it's named after that good old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
Good morning, folks. Thanks for your patience. We're a little bit behind getting the airplanes over here. My name is Kevin Wisniewski. I'm the chairman and commanding officer of the World War II Air Base off to the west over here, a little bit to the west, northwest. If you want to come visit us, we have what we represent the 340th Bomb Group moving up the boot of Italy. So if you want to step back in time, come visit us. We're going to talk a little bit to warm up the show here before a very legendary World War II hero comes out here, Mr. Bud Anderson. So you're very privileged to see this man today and hear him talk. I just want to let you know that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the men that serviced these aircraft and the men that flew these aircraft to just show you what they wore and what they used, how different it is from then as it is to today. So we're going to start over here with the C model P-51. Reeve here is representing earlier war pilot, how Bud might have looked as he flew the C model Old Crow. He's wearing a British-style flight helmet. It's called the C helmet. They found that it was more comfortable than the U.S.-made helmet, and the fighter pilots liked them because they looked better. They were issued the leather A2 flight jacket. Up until World War II, all flight gear was made out of animal skins and leather. Iconic jacket. They brought it back today. Unfortunately, believe it or not, the pilots back then didn't like it because it would chafe on their neck, and it wasn't very maneuverable when they were fighting combat situations. So this jacket, midway through the war, was superseded, and I will talk about that when we get to it. But this is what they would have been issued in the 1930s through the entrance to the war. He's wearing an A4 flight suit. The suit was also designed in 1936 and worn until supplies were depleted. Of course, now they're flying at altitude, so they designed the oxygen mask to wear with the flight helmet. They started doing that in World War II. He has, of course, his sunglasses to help with the glare of the sun, and if he's in combat, he also has his goggles if he needs to wear those for eye protection. And of course, if he is shot down, he doesn't have his chute on right now, but we'll talk about the chutes with the other gentleman. He's wearing a .45 sidearm, so in case he's shot down, he does have some type of defense on him. He also carries a pair of leather flight gloves, tight fitting. That way he can be assured of a grip on his controls. And he's wearing the standard 3/4 service shoe. On to our mid-war impression. Steve here is wearing the same flight suit. Again, they use these until supplies are depleted. Being a fighter pilot, they were able to get away with buying private purchase shoes, and this is a very popular style that the fighter pilots wore with the wraparound buckles. You'll see that a lot in photographs if you analyze early World War II photographs. He's wearing the Mae West also. Anytime the pilots flew over the channel or over water, they were required to wear the Mae West. They call it a Mae West because of a popular performer from before that time. It's basically a life vest. If he is ditched into the water, the chute obviously comes off first, and then he just pulls these little cords down here and it would inflate. And then the pilot also carries a whistle. A lot of people ask, what's with the whistle? Well, if they're down in the channel and air sea rescue is coming, they can blow the whistle to help them be located. Steve is wearing the American-style flight helmet and the American goggles on that helmet, and also wearing his sunglasses. And again, if you turn around, Steve, we can see that you're wearing the seat pack chute. So when he climbs into the aircraft, there's just a tub on the pilot's seat. So this would be his cushion and his parachute in one. And you can't see it, but this fighter pilot here has decorated his flight jacket. It's covered with his gear right now. But it was very popular for bomber crews and fighter pilots to have an artist within their group paint their jackets just to show a little bit, remind them of home. Pinups were very popular, and just to show a little toughness. Eli here is just showing a pilot, and he's in his Class B uniform. So if he's pre-flight going to briefing, or how you see him walking around the base, he's wearing his khaki pants, his service shoes, again, his A2 jacket. Pilots went to war wearing a tie in World War II. Also, the British and the Germans did the same thing. I don't know what it is with the tie, but they wanted to look very snappy when they got shot down, I guess, if they got shot down. He's wearing the standard officer service cap. And again, myself, I'm wearing the early A4 flight suit. As a base officer, I might be walking around the flight line myself. So, and then late war, when we get to the D model, we can see now that some of the equipment's been superseded a little bit. They came out with a cloth cotton flight jacket. It's fur-lined. It's called the B10. They only used it 1 year before the B15 superseded this one. So it was kind of an experimental model, and they took suggestions from the pilots in combat to how to modify this jacket to make it more serviceable, and they came out with the B15. So this is actually a very, actually he's wearing the B15. I stand corrected. There's one jacket before this. But the B10 is very rare jacket these days. So he's got the cloth jacket, it's got the fur collar, much more comfortable and provides much better warmth than the leather A2. He's wearing the cotton version of the helmet that Steve is wearing. They have leather or cotton for summer weather. It's a little more comfortable. And then he's wearing the metal frame goggles with the glass frames were replaced by a larger rubber frame goggle in 1944. James is also wearing the seat, or the back chute, okay? So it's the same thing. When he gets into his aircraft, now he's got a cushion in the bucket of the seat, but now this becomes his cushion to his back. And there's no difference in how he would bail out with either chute. And before you get in the aircraft, you would hook your leg straps here so they're not dragging and slapping around on your legs. And then once he gets into the aircraft, then he would hook up his leg straps with the assistance of his crew chief. Speaking of the crew, these planes don't fly unless there are mechanics working on them all night. So we have our first sergeant here, he would be in charge pretty much of the whole squadron to make sure things are done right, taking care of his men see what they need, because they're up all night servicing these aircraft. We have our armorer. Their job is simply to load the ammunition into the wings of the aircraft. We would have a special hydraulics man to work on the hydraulics of the aircraft. We would have, they all look the same, right? We would have one man that's, his job would be making sure the radio works. That's going to be a big problem if your radio doesn't work while you're in the middle of combat. And then we have another crew chief over, or mechanic over here. A lot of times in the pictures, you'll just see the crew chief, but it took more than one person to service a fighter plane. Now, if it was a bomber, there'd be a lot more crewmen attached to that. And that can vary from base to base, depending on their manpower situation. Again, since we're short of time, I'm going to have to wrap it up right now, so we won't be able to do a Q&A on the equipment, but we're going to stick around here for a little bit, some of us, and afterward, if you have any questions about what these pilots wore, what they use, we'd be more than happy to answer those questions. And again, please come visit us at the camp. We'd love to see you. It's a lot of fun. The kids get to step back in time, and we try to honor our veterans the best we can to show you all how they lived and what conditions they had during World War II. Again, my name's Kevin. Thank you a lot for being here. I know you're going to enjoy the show.
My name is Connie Boland, the founder and now the chairman, working with a lot of really great people to put on this production that is known as Warbirds in Review. As you will see beside me, behind me, there are a lot of people who'd like to pay tribute to our next veteran guest, Colonel Bud Anderson. We have the Old Crow D model, we have the Old Crow B model aircraft, and we have an Old Crow car. And then right across in the grass over here, a gentleman by the name of Frank Huber, he said, I can't have a Warbird, but I have an RV-7A, and I painted it like Old Crow so that I can take it around to Young Eagle rallies, to kids, and let people know the story of Colonel Bud Anderson, even though it is not a Warbird. So when you have a chance, say thanks to Frank, who has his airplane parked over here in the grass. He's not a Warbird, but for right now, he's in the Warbird area to pay tribute to Colonel Anderson. And as they gather the chairs here, I'm standing on the Scott's Miracle-Gro logo. Scott's Miracle-Gro Company and Jim Hagedorn make this presentation, this entire event possible. And you help by purchasing the programs and making your donations. But we have some really wonderful supporters, and Jim Hagedorn and Scott's Miracle-Gro is one of those. Another couple that present a lot of help to us. Let's take a moment and watch the B29 flyover. That's a special sight, too, only at Oshkosh, sitting here watching two Mustangs and a Mustang car and watch a B-29 go over. As I was saying, Ron and Diane Fagan, who are right here front and center, several years ago they came and said to us, we need to do something for you guys to step this production up and give you a good place to work. They built this Quonset hut that you see behind us. That is our production facility, our green room for all our guests. So to Ron and Diane Fagan, always my very sincere personal thanks, and thanks from everybody. And this is the dude. This is Jim Hagedorn right here, Scott's Miracle-Gro Company. I'll get to you in just a minute, Jim. I love it. Okay, so we have Jim's car. This is Jim's car that Jack Roush built for him several years ago. They were just discussing in here that Jack got car number 51. Jim's car got number 52. I'm not sure how that worked out. But this year at the Gathering of Eagles auction, the EAA will be auctioning a new Old Crow aircraft that Roush Performance Racing, did I get that right, Jack, has built? Roush Performance Products has built a beautiful car that will be auctioned on Thursday night. So you should all make sure you follow that auction. It's going to be really special. Maybe it'll be out here on the line on Friday. You can see it now, I think, in the Ford display tent down at Show Center. Maybe you've seen that already. So that is my saying thank you to all of you for being here, for all the aircraft owners, participants who make this possible. And if you will direct your attention to the Jumbotron now, we have a short intro video reference Colonel Bud Anderson's career. And Bud, you're very special to all of us. Thank you for being here.
In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, and by 1938, controlled most of China. During those same years, Hitler was building his war machine. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland. By 1941, Germany controlled Denmark and Norway, Belgium and Luxembourg, the Netherlands and France, Yugoslavia and Greece, and then invaded Russia. In 1940, the incredible British fought off the Germans in the air, the Battle of Britain. For many Americans then, the mood was to stay neutral, stay out of foreign wars. Of course, that was not to be. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and 3 days later, on Germany and Italy. Over the next 4 years, our country was transformed militarily, economically, and in the most human terms describable. It was the most widespread war in history. It's estimated that at least 75 million people died. By 1944, more than 2.5 million men and women were serving in the Army Air Corps. Over the course of the war, some 40,000 American airmen died. 18,000 went missing. 41,000 were captured. These numbers seem incomprehensible today. We and our allies in combat and at home paid huge personal prices to save the free world from oppression. Our veteran guest aviator this afternoon is a retired Air Force colonel. He flew Mustangs with the 357th Fighter Group out of Leiston, England, nicknamed the Oxford Boys. He was a major at age 22, flying 2 tours, logging 116 missions over Europe. He was a triple ace with 16 1/4 air victories and is currently the ranking American living ace of World War II. After the war, he continued his career as a test pilot. His last assignment was commanding a tactical fighter wing in Vietnam.
All right. You know, I'm sure they're going to regret putting the inmate in charge. So I have to take advantage of this. This may be the only time they ever let me be in charge here. So I'm Jim Hagedorn. I'm the CEO of Scott's Miracle-Gro, and that's my bird. Started flying as a kid. Went in the Air Force, flew F-16s, 7 years, and then been lucky enough to meet a bunch of these people here. So I thought the way I would set up today is a little different than it's probably been. Of course, the star is that old guy right there who is, you know, truly a legend. And like, no joke, a fighter pilot legend. So the people who are here with me, Bud Anderson, and all you can say about Bud is a true fighter pilot. And if anybody's a fighter pilot here, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's done it for real. Jack Roush, who has added so much to this ability. When I bought my airplane from him, he interviewed me like I was a scrub. And part of it is making sure that if you're going to buy this, you know what it is, that it's a piece of history of the United States. It's important, and that you respect it and share it. And that's part of why we're here. Ray Fowler is he's a Viper driver, so another F-16 guy. He's currently flying. He's a Delta guy. So he earns, I guess, money that way. But he probably flies more of the unique Warbirds that are out here than anyone. So I asked him if he'd be willing to sit with us. And the first part of this is going to be really about being a fighter pilot. And then we're going to end that with Bud, since he's the ultimate fighter pilot, you know, the highest ace that's living in this country. And then we have Paul Draper. Paul works for Jack. He flies all these birds, just kind of learned. So we've been beating the heck out of him the last couple days, teaching him how to fly formation. And we're going to talk about the design of the Mustang. We're going to talk about how to keep them flying, what's unique about them. And that's kind of how I hope this flows. But my notes aren't very severe, so not a lot of notes. I just want to throw a little bit out to Oshkosh. This event, so I'm high right now, pretty much high on Mustang flying. So we flew 3 sorties today, I guess a 6-ship, and then 2 5-ships. The 6-ship had 7 motors because we flew with that crazy twin Mustang that's around here somewhere. Ray was flying that. This place, as an aviator, so everybody's got their thing that they get from Oshkosh. This community, for those of us who are lucky enough to fly fighters here, is the one place, one time a year, where every day we will fly military-style sorties, multiple airplanes, just having just a blast. And so Oshkosh, you know, I know that there's all these communities here, and that's fabulous. This community here is really cool. And, you know, so you're here, so I guess you must be slightly interested in it. But Oshkosh is great. Connie Bolin, who's the president of Warbirds, when I learned to fly the airplane, which, of course, another one of these Jack things, he said you can't fly the airplane until you have 100 hours of heavy tail wheel time. So I had to, but he gave me his T6 to fly. Said if you wreck it, it's yours. And I got the 100 hours. I passed my sort of interview with Jack. Now, he is a little bit of I promise not to use a lot of bad language. But he's a little bit of a butthole. Jack made me promise contract. He had a contract that says I can never change the name of the airplane. And he made it like, he didn't tell me he was building another Old Crow. So I thought it was really unfair. I call that one the faux crow. This is the real crow. So I thought it was a little unfair, Jack, that you like cheated me like that. Okay. Flying fighters, for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I joined the Air Force. This is a true story. I kept it to myself, and I knew I was doing well in the first half, flying T-37s, so it was 1980. And at the end of T-37s, the first 6 months, my flight commander, this like A-10 driver, Ralph Hudnall, says to me, here's how it's going to be, gents. Those people who want to like kill people, you're going to sit on this side of the room. And those people who want to fly the killer's toilet paper around, you're going to sit on the other side of the room. Now, a lot of people wanted to be airline pilots, so a lot of people were cool being toilet paper flyers. But he came around to me and he said, so what's it going to be, Hagedorn? I kill people, sir. So that's really like the moment I decided I wanted to be a fighter pilot. It's been a fabulous, it's like today, but flying around Europe back in the Cold War with the most fantastic airplane in the world, the F-16, it's hard to believe you get paid for this, So thank you, America. Thank you guys for paying your taxes. It's great working for the United States. This guy flies Mustangs. He flies that twin thing, Corsair, Zero. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. And he's flying airliners. And he flies the F-16 for the Alabama Guard. So maybe a little bit about your view of being a fighter pilot and the P-51, the F-16.
Absolutely. 1, 2. This is on. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Obviously, it's a huge thrill just to sit up here on this panel of these people that are very much more accomplished than I'll ever be. But I love being involved with this. I obviously enjoy Oshkosh very much. But same with Jim. Part of being a fighter pilot, I actually got involved with the Warbirds of America way before I was even in the Air Force. So I was lucky enough to come to Oshkosh in a T-34 of all things, when I was young and didn't really know what I was going to do. But I got to ride to Oshkosh in a T-34, and I said, and I got to see people like Bud and other heroes, and I said, I want to be that guy. So I went down to sign on the dotted line for the Air Force, and that's what took me on the path. At the time, the Air Force was actually banking fighters, and they were saying, yes, we'll get you into a flight school, but it may be a year or more. And I didn't know anything about the Guard, and met someone that was in the Air National Guard, and it's really unique because most people don't think and don't know what the Guard is. They hear it's you're a weekend warrior, where the Air National Guard really flies pretty much full time. And I'd say only 40% of the people are kind of your weekend warriors, which would be people that come out and they keep their qualifications, not flying the airplanes, but doing other jobs, enlisted jobs, crew chiefs, fueling. And really, they're there to answer the call, and they go to their real jobs. And obviously, when we get the call that we're going overseas to go fight the war, that is their full-time job.
How many deployments have you had?
I've had 5 combat deployments. Unfortunately, in 2014, I missed Oshkosh, so I know there's several people right now that are deployed that would rather be here. And I was one of them in 2014. While these guys were out flying, having fun, I watched the live camera with them taxiing in and out, and I was sitting in Bagram in Afghanistan. So. Again, still nice to answer the call, but this is where I want to be every year. This is, I think Ron Fagan sitting over there smiling, he told me that how excited he gets about Oshkosh every year, and I'm actually the same way, as it kind of builds up, just one, knowing who I'm going to get to hang out with, which I look around and say, how am I here? I don't know how I got to hang out with these guys, but it's, because of Jim. I do give him credit. But it is an amazing thing. Back to the Guard. The Air National Guard actually put a package into every Guard unit in the country. I ended up getting a couple offers to go fly the F-16, and here I am 21 years later, so I'm at 21 years in the Guard and still flying F-16. So it is a young man's game. Obviously, it's a lot of fun to go out and pull a lot of G's, which I still get to do. But only in the Air National Guard do you get to go and start at an F-16, and assuming your platform doesn't change, you get to end your career in an F-16. And in fact, we just announced the F-35. So I don't think I'm going to go to school in the F-35. That's quite a commitment, about a 3-year commitment. I haven't said no, but I haven't said yes. But it is an amazing thing to
Talk
serve.
about the Viper and the Mustang.
So the P-51, the F-16, everybody looks at this airplane. I think if you could pick any airplane to fly on the top list, it'd be a P-51, right? And the next thing would really be an F-16. And the F-16 has kind of transitioned into the role of what the P-51 did in World War II. So you look at this airplane, it did everything. Close air support, obviously air superiority, air-to-air fighter. So they could go out there and do what we do with the F-16 today, which is the same role. Unfortunately, not as much air-to-air. That's what we'd love to do. So we all start drooling, salivating, just the thought of shooting down another airplane, which in the theaters we're going to these days, that's not very practical. However, the support of the men and women on the ground is what the F-16 really excels at, which is close air support. And most of our time and sorties are basically direct support of coalition forces, U.S. forces on the ground. And the great thing about today, we're still dropping 500-pound bombs, just like came off of the P-51, except for the ones we drop don't miss. They're GPS guided, and we could literally from 35,000 feet pull the coordinates of the Scott's Miracle-Gro logo on the ground right here, and it would drive right into this within a couple of feet. So that's the nice capability of F-16, and it does good work for America.
Okay. So, most important guy, most important fighter pilot is Bud. Dude, it's like elderly abuse. They had him in there. He must have signed his name 1,000 times in there, like last hour. So will you leave him alone, please? But I got a chance to visit with him and say, look, I'm not going to ask you to tell the stories that everybody's asked before. His first combat, actually, we're going to do the first combat, only for a reason. Bud was probably the most famous high-angle gunshot guy in World War II in the Mustang. So I don't know if a lot of these guys shoot birds and stuff when they're kids, but the guys who can shoot with a real high angle and hit somebody, that's a pretty rare thing to do with a gun. So we're not going to lead with that. I asked Bud, hey, Bud, can you tell the story of your worst kill? The story that nobody ever hears. And he said, dude, I shot one guy down and I didn't even fire my gun. So you want to tell that story? First of all, a big hand for Bud Anderson.
I don't know. That story's too embarrassing.
No, come on.
Well, let me see. One time, I had a flight of 4, and I was coming home, and we were pretty sour. Well, we were about the middle of France. Come out around Abbeville, where
Does he have water?
the Abbeville kids were in Yellow Noses were there, and they were supposed to be a bunch of bad guys. When I'm going home, I had the guys kind of in spread formation going along. We had plenty of fuel. We had dropped our tanks and burned out the rear tank, and so the airplane was ready to go. So we're cruising along, not too, I don't even remember, but say 20,000 feet, or 15 to 20. And I was looking around, and all of a sudden I see high above us 4 ME-109s. They were in kind of in a spread formation. Excuse me, Jack.
The abuse you take, dude.
These damn things, you grab a hold of them and they.
That's for you, sir.
I'll spill it all over everybody. So I'm watching, and there was a flight of 4, and we're going along, and I see this single guy comes out, and he starts right after us. And, a fighter pilot can't talk without using their hands. If I had to sit on these, I couldn't tell you this story. So, single guy coming down after us. And so I had a flight. We just broke into him, and he goes back up, sits. And he keeps tracking us. We got back on our course for home, and they keep coming along. And a little later, he starts again. One guy. We break into him, like we would go head on with him. And that's not fun if you'd have to really do it. And he breaks off, goes back up. What's going on here, So we keep heading home. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes a single P-47, and he attacks us. He thinks we're ME-109s. We break into him, and he pulls up like this, and he's probably looking back and saying, "Oh crap, P-51s." And while he's going up, this Messerschmitt came down on him, got right on his ass, and blew him up. By that time, the guy had lost all of his energy, and he was right here. So this time I said, "By God, you've slowed down. You're in trouble." And I went over after him, and I got right on his tail. Well, not ready to shoot. And that guy cruises along, bails out of the airplane.
So, that was the worst kill he's ever had. Sound of freedom. But the Eric Hartman always had this view: is he never shot anybody who saw him. He only shot people who just drifted in front of him or never saw him. Did you ever shoot anybody that didn't see you?
What's that?
Did you ever shoot anybody who never saw you?
Yeah, probably. Another worst one was later, after the invasion, when we defeated the Luftwaffe in the spring of 1944. And we killed most of their really good, experienced pilots. The core of the Luftwaffe was killed, and that's really how we defeated the Luftwaffe. General Doolittle turned us loose, took all the restrictions off. Staying with the bombers, 18,000-foot rule. That's out. Pursue and destroy. So after D-Day, I think we noticed, when I look back, that the pilot skills dropped was much lower than before. And I could remember being attacked by a single Focke-Wulf. We broke into him. That seemed to scare him right there. So he ran, he got into the clouds, and it was just a thin deck. And sitting above it, I could see him.
And I think he's in there trying to fly instruments and trying to hide. And then here's a big opening up ahead. And so I follow him, and I could see him, a glimpse of him in the cloud, thin clouds. And he breaks out into this big open space. And I just slip around on his rear and like that. And I really felt sorry for him for a millisecond or so. But I pulled up alongside of him, and the airplane was smoking badly. And he popped the canopy, and a huge batch of flame just came right up through the cockpit. It was kind of a horrible sight, but that's another worst one. Worst kill.
See, I bet you guys never heard these stories. Anybody heard this story before? There you go.
You haven't read my book, I guess.
Buy his book. He's signed enough stuff in there, so he paid for it. High angle snapshots. So, when you think about shooting somebody with a gun in an airplane, once that bullet comes out of the cannon, the guy's got to fly through it. And most people, it's not low angle stuff. The real trick, and this is, I think, some of the really great fighter pilots just had a great eye for high angle gunshots. Can you tell us about high angle gunshots? And I guess that takes us into your first kill.
Yeah. First kill.
Well, but just another thing, because Bud's told the story a lot, and a lot of people have heard it, that he kind of was waiting and waiting and waiting for that first kill. And so this is a story about, the wait is over, and it's a high-angle gunshot.
Yeah, I was leading a flight of 4 on the way home. And another flight joined us, same group, but just a different squadron. So we had eight or 9, I can't remember, P-51s, and we're going home. I'm leading. And I look up ahead, and I see this B-17 down below us. One engine feathered, one of them smoking, and he's chugging along all by himself out there. Wait, we're back in Germany. So I said, well, let's go take this guy out to the coast. So we head on over there. And out of nowhere comes 3 MU-109s. Their belly is up to us. We're coming this way. The target, the B-17's down here. They're coming down, going after him. Obviously, they didn't see the 2 flights of Mustangs, or they wouldn't have come. So I said, all right, guys, one of those is mine. So we cut them off at the pass and started getting into a circling dogfight. Well, if you get into perfect circles, you can do something about it. But if you get started wrong and you come at the guy at a high angle and then he's coming at you at a high angle, going around and around and around, and I can't quite get it in tight enough to get on his tail. And he comes shooting by me, at 90 degrees off, and same way with me. So I knew how to shoot. I shot quail as a kid. I went through 1, 2, 3 gunnery schools, the last one being the Royal Air Force Gunnery School. And I had done a lot of practice shooting because I was a flight leader. And so I said, God darn, why can't I get on his tail,
And I learned later that a ME-109 in the hands of a good pilot down low could give a Mustang a hard time. So the next time we come around like that, I says, you know what I'm going to do? When he's here, I'm going to pull through him and fire and see if I can't hit him. Now, when I do that, I'm bellied up. I can't see him. And I have to have it very accurate. So I pulled through him, steady, pulled out here when I thought was a good lead. I can't see him. Fired a burst, and then he comes through. I see him, and he's smoking coolant. A hot dog. I got him with a lucky shot. Wow. I overdid my expectations, actually. And then I'm kind of cheering there in the cockpit. And then I'm aware of there's somebody just pulled up on my wing. And I looked over here, and it was Johnny England from the 62nd Squadron. And he had his mask off. He was grinning like a monkey. And he made some kind of gesture, sort of like this. And then he pulled away and got in his flight, and we went on home. Took the B-17 out, and then went home. When I got home, in our intelligence debrief, I asked my wingman and all that. I said, "Did you see me shoot that guy down?" He said, "No, I was out of position, and they had two others that we were trying to knock out too, and I didn't really see it." Oh Christ! And all the way home, I convinced myself that I probably did not shoot that guy down, that Johnny England came in here and shot it down behind me and pulled up on my way. I don't think that was very sportsmanlike, but I guess the war was on. And anything goes. I knew it was a lucky shot, so I didn't make a claim. I filled it out, but I told him to hold it. I have to talk to somebody. So now I'm going over to the officers' club, and I'm going to look up John England and get his statement. Now, how am I going to do this, Am I going to say, "Hey, you jerk, did you shoot that thing down out from under me?" And I don't know how to bring it up. So I go in the club. He's sitting at the bar, and he sees me, and he comes running over to me, and he says, "Andy," he says, "that was the greatest shot I ever saw. You got that sucker out there at about 60 degrees angle off." I said, "Oh, Johnny, lucky shot."
Just a sort of tactical question, and how you guys, the strategy. Did you expect wingmen to support the leaders, or was everybody free just to engage who they wanted, or did you expect your wingmen to stay with you?
Wingman should stay with you, protect your rear while you're shooting.
So you didn't want them engaged with other targets?
No, not unless it was necessary, of course. But
so today we were out flying, Ray's leading, and we're out on the west side of the lake over here, or east side of the lake, and he says, "Look, there's a seaplane down there. We've got to go shoot." So all of us roll in sequence on the seat, which turns out to be Mark Baker, the head of AOPA. I did see the whites of his eyes. And we took that low, slow dude and just shot the heck out of him. How does someone get a quarter kill? That's a mystery, isn't it?
Well, a quarter kill, you share it with 3 other people, of course. You fly on a flight of 4, so I shared it with my complete flight. It's a little bit of a long story. It tells you something about the Mustang, too. If you wanted to go, if you're going on a really, really long-range flight, and you wanted, and I personally wanted every drop of gas we had, we'd put 208-gallon drop tanks on. But each wing carried 92 gallons. And then you had an 85-gallon tank behind you, right behind you. And what that 85-gallon tank did was made the airplane actually unstable, a full tank. A half a tank, the thing flew like a dream. So we were going to go back into Posen, Poland, I think the target was on this particular mission. And I'm leading a flight of 4, and we got this stream of bombers just as far as I could see, pulling contrails, very obvious. And we heard on the radio that there was some action up at the front of the column. So we head up that way. And sure enough, here's the bombers. They're coming in this long stream. And 4 ME-109s flying line abreast, beautiful formation, are making a head-on attack. They go through them, shot down 2 of them, and then they, in formation, rolled over, dived down, and then went to the front like they're going to go up and come around again. And we're back here chugging along trying to get up there, so we drop our tanks. I still have a full fuselage tank. And what that did, the full fuselage tank gave the airplane an FCG. And if you're pulling in a turn, you pull heavy, 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 and all of a sudden the stick gets lighter, 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 and now you end up pushing forward to keep the airplane from pitching up. We had dropped our tanks, of course, and I'd switched over to the fuselage tank. And so when they come around like that back, they get started their turn, we cut them off at the pass. And I singled out one, and I got into a turning dogfight with him. You know, one right across, you're just looking right across at him, eyeball to eyeball, going around, around, around like this. Only I'm holding forward on the stick to control the airplane. And lots of top rudder, and I'm just staggering around on this turn. I'm just barely staying with him. We go around a couple of times, and we're right in front of the B-17 column that's going along like this. And we're out here turning and turning and turning, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. So we're both trying to get on each other's tail, and I'm hoping we don't drift. With the B-17s, don't go right through us, but we're right in their line. And I'm hoping the German pilot thinks the same thing. And I'm hoping that he breaks down first. Whoever does that is going to be at a little bit of disadvantage. So we come around on another turn like that, and pretty soon I can see the detail of the airplanes, the windshield and things like that, of the lead airplane. Oh my God. The B-17s, if you pointed your nose at them, they shot at you. We accepted that. We knew that was the way it was. And
So all of a sudden, MA-109 sticks his nose down, and that gets me right on his tail. He's way ahead of me. He's going down like crazy. And this is a bright summer day, green, just green all over, about noon. And I can follow him, get down there, and he stretches out. And he comes around in a turn, like he's going to come back and go head on with me. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Get in a turning dogfight down here? Or no, if I don't do something, he's going to get a shot at me coming head on. So I got a quick sight picture, head on, fired a long burst, and went by him. And my wingman came along here, and he says, you can't believe how you hit that guy. You hit him all over the front of the airplane. The cowling came off, the propeller broke, and the guy pulled up like this and just rolled over and bailed out, fell out of the airplane. So during this dogfight, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow. Like, here's a shadow, and there's an airplane down here somewhere making that shadow. And I noticed the direction it was going. Had to be an airplane. But it's just a shadow I couldn't see. And he had to be low, and I looked, but I was busy with an MA-109, so I got the flight together and asked him if we polished off I think 2 out of the 4. And I asked my flight, did you see anything else down here flying? No. Okay, get up here. And we're down low now. Remember I said it was a bright green, dark green day. So we're flying along, line abreast. I thought he was going west, so pretty soon I saw the shadow again before I could see the airplane. And then we come screaming up to it, and I see this. He's right here, and his shadow's right here. And I said, oh my God, obsolete Battle of Britain Heinkel 111 bomber. And I sit down low, like shooting fish in a barrel. And I thought, just here, there's another easy victory. Then I thought about my flight. And my wingmen very, very seldom got shot to get to shoot when they're flying with me. And so I said...
what a bastard, man.
So I said, get into practice gunnery formation. And as soon as I said that word, they knew what that meant. We're going to get to shoot. And when you do practice, you got your target being towed here, and you get into echelon left. The lead goes in, makes a left-hand pursuit curve, fires, comes over here, and then the second guy does the same thing, the third, fourth, and they get into right-hand echelon, and then you come in and you make a right-hand pass. So you get a lot of practice doing that. Anyway, these guys, as soon as I said get into practice gunnery formation, they almost collided, getting over there, getting into formation. and so I go in, he's down low, I fire, I get one engine smoking, pulled up, noticed that he had a gunner in the back. Second man came in, I think he silenced the gunner, and got strikes on the other side of the wing. I'm the leader, so I'm scoring them. And
number 3 comes in, and he really did a number on the other engine. And he comes up, I score him, he's got hits. Number 4 was a new guy. He was okay, but he was a new guy.
Says it all.
And he goes in and he fires every round of ammunition he had in that one firing pass. And you don't do that with 50 calibers. You got to fire a few second burst. If you make a long burst like that, you burn out the barrel, and pretty soon you can see if you have a tracer, you can see the thing comes out, and it comes out like this. You're not going to hit a thing. But I scored him too.
You gave him a mercy kill?
and now the guy is in real deep trouble, and perfectly timed comes a big meadow up ahead of him. And he bellies it in. He couldn't bail out. He's skidding along the thing and then hit something really bad on the left side, and it tore the wing off outside the engine. And then the fuselage just kind of spun around like that. So he had two big fires going on the ground. And believe it or not, 2 guys got out of that airplane. And one of them was just standing there kind of looking at it.
He didn't gesture your way?
Going around like angry bees up there, you know. And the other guy takes off. And there is absolutely no place to hide. But he runs. He's running and running and running. I said, oh, God, I'm going to give this guy a thrill. So I came down like I was going to strafe him and went right over the top of him, pulled up, did a roll, and that took the flight home. And that's how you get a quarter of a kill.
All right. I know you guys are here. You know what a privilege it is to hear Bud. You know, he's alive, he's talking about it, he's sharing his experiences. So I think a big hand for Colonel Anderson.
Now, please sit down.
All right. You guys okay if we talk about the Mustang a little bit? Just about the airplane. Jack is going to talk really about the design of the airplane, what makes it special, what he knows so much about, and is a real student of this. So a big hand for Jack Roush.
Thank you. The story of the Mustang really starts in April 1940 when the British Air Purchasing Commission came over. This is more than a year before D-Day when the U.S. got blown into World War II. There was a lot of conflict in the population about whether we should be pacifist or whether we should be aggressive with this thing that's going on in Europe again. But the British were trying to find manufacturing supply or sources for airplanes. They before the Battle of Britain, but they could see the storm clouds brewing and knew they were going to need more airplanes than they could build themselves. So they came over to talk to North American, who built the AT-6 trainer, and they built the B-25 bomber. And they said that they had no experience with fighters, but they'd like for them to build a fighter. They'd like for them to accept a license from Curtiss and build the P-40 Warhawk. And the North American group, the engineering and the management both, had a number of ideas about what the future of fighters looked like, and it wasn't a P-40. So they negotiated a chance to do a proposal for a brand new airplane. And they gave him, the British gave him 120 days, which was the same amount of time that was allotted for retooling the Curtiss P-40 in a North American plant and be able to build the obsolete airplane. And anyway, in 102 days, not 120 days, but in 102 days, they had a airplane that was ready for an engine, and they had to wait 18 days for the Air Force, or for the Army Air Corps, or for the Purchasing Commission for the U.S. Fighters and military equipment to give up an Allison engine. The Allison engine relegated the Mustang to being a ground support and observation airplane. It really couldn't engage in conflict over the mid-teens. It had a single-stage, single-speed supercharger that ran out of air when the fight was above 20,000 feet. In fact, it was above 30,000 feet a lot of the time as the war later developed, because the German airplanes, both the 109 and the 190 that followed it, had adequate supercharging to go in the high 30s. But the Mustang, the so-called NA-73X proposal for the British couldn't do that. The North American people had some good ideas. Edgar Smoot was the chief design engineer. He was German-born, and he had his eyes on everything that was being done and around the world. The laminar flow wing that the Mustang is known for was really explored earlier by the Japanese and the Russians. So they had the benefit of some information that had been published by the Japanese and the Russians. They had the NASA the National Aviation, whatever the rest of it means, research activity that was doing some things to minimize the drag. They also had decided to use a V12 water-cooled engine, which gave you a cross-sectional area about half the size of a big round Pratt & Whitney engine, and it took half the fuel to realize the same performance. So they had the V6 profile, or I'm sorry, the V12 cross-section profile. They figured out that if they put the right kind of diffuser on the exit of the radiator duct for cooling the engine, for the coolant, they could generate some amount of thrust. The claim was made that the scoop that they had would balance the thrust so that there was no penalty for having a radiator hanging down the air. I don't know if that was true, but that was one of the things they talked about. And they wanted flush rivets throughout. So they wound up with a airplane with an airframe that was substantially less, maybe 50% less drag than the P-40 or the P-47 that were also airplanes of the fighter planes of the day. In 1943, late 1942, they put the Spitfire two-speed supercharged two-stage blowed engine in a Mustang, and it proved to be 50 knots faster at 20,000 feet than the Spitfire, and so they knew they were onto something. So by the time Bud and his 357th Fighter Group arrived from Tonopah into the European theater, the early Merlin-powered, English-powered, Spitfire-powered P-51 Mustangs were just coming online. And they were able to make that conversion when Jimmy Doolittle realized that they were going to have to carry the fight all the way to the ground and all the way to the target if they were going to bomb the Germans out of the war. There was, just as an idea, bragging a little bit about the American industry of the time, but at its peak, Americans built the Packard as a supplier or licensee for Rolls-Royce, built half the engines that were Merlin engines that were built by Rolls-Royce and all the other suppliers from 1939 to 1955. Packard Motor Car Company built 85,000 engines, and when your maintenance crew put a Packard engine on your airplane, you had something that had 11 hours of flight testing, They burned the Packard factory in Detroit burned 80,000 gallons of 115, 145 avgas in developing these and improving these engines before they went in the box per day. That's a bunch of rail cars, 16,000 50-gallon drums. So when you got a fresh engine, you had a really good idea that it was going to be good. I don't think Bud ever had a mechanical problem with his engine. So we're real proud of what Detroit and what the Americans did to support the idea that the British had for this really good engine. I heard one of the guys talking about the Mustang. They referred to this green airplane as a C model. It's actually a B model. The B models, which were the first of the Merlin-powered airplanes, were built in Inglewood, California, and the same airplane was built in Dallas, Texas. So it was designated a C model. The C models did not go to the 357th. They went to other fighter groups, but had a B model. There were 4,000 Bs and Cs built, and less than 4,000 Bs and Cs built. And the airplane that followed it, which is Jim Hagedorn's D model, that's to the left here, they built 8,000 of those. When Bud ran his first tour, he had to share his airplane. Whenever his airplane was out of maintenance, whenever it was ready to fly, it flew. There were more pilots than there were airplanes in 43, early 44. And unfortunately, the green airplane that's represented here was the third airplane that Bud had in his first tour. He finished his tour with this airplane, but two of the airplanes that he flew before, they were Old Crows, but they were actually shot down with somebody else in the airplane, but with Bud not being able to take care of it. But the Jim Hagedorn D model, he flew it his entire tour. There were lots of airplanes. There were over 8,000 D models built between the time they came online and the end of the war. And Bud never got a bullet hole in his D model. He got that with one airplane. There were 15,000 Mustangs built in total. Some were built in Australia. Some were built in various other countries. But there were 15,000 total, and over half of them were D models. The Mustang was cheaper than the P-47 or the P-38 or the or all the bombers to produce. It was $51,000 of taxpayer money for a Mustang, minus engine and brakes and landing gear, engine, brakes, landing gear, and some other and machine guns. One thing before I give it back to Jim, that's worthy to note. I know David Hartman touched on it in the video, but from Pearl Harbor to the end of the war with VJ Day, when the Japanese surrendered, there were 170 U.S. aircraft lost every single day, and there were 220 airmen and flight crew lost with those airplanes. So it was a big price to be paid. The Mustangs were at the center of it. And, of course, Bud Anderson. I enjoy, whenever I have a chance to be one-on-one with Bud, I tell the people that hear me that he's one of the world's greatest aviators and greatest test pilots. He's one of America's bravest heroes, and he's one of my best friends.
Hey. Dude, I'm going to cry. Hey, just a quickie on Packard versus Rolls-Royce. You know, there's this reputation that the Rolls motors was kind of a hand-built motor. None of them were the same, and the Packard motors really were much more of a manufactured motor that the parts were all interchangeable. Is that true?
Well, the Packard motor car, that is true. The Packard Motor Car Company built Packard cars before the war, and they were the cream of the cream of automobiles. They were highly priced, but their quality was something really special. But there were 4 dashes that were built by Packard. There was a Dash 1, a Dash 3, a Dash 9, and some experimental dashes that never really made it in volume. But every dash number, every Dash 1, these are that came with a Dash 3, and this came with a Dash 7. Every dash number, any part from any dash numbered engine would fit any other engine of the same dash number. And the British didn't do it that way. They built engines more like we got a repair station. We build engines today. You look at a part, and if the part's got service life in it, you grind it undersized or you bore a hole oversized, and you fit a mating part for it. And so the parts, the engines are like fingerprints. Every one of them's different with the number of standard and non-standard parts in it. But Packard didn't do that. They threw all their scrap away, and they made parts that were standard, and you had not only better reliability, but you had, in the field, you had better opportunity to service the engines.
All right, I know it's hot out here. So it's hot here too. We're just about done. But again, I think it's a real privilege to sort of be here. You know, there's I think a saying for Warbirds America, like keep them flying or something like that. And I think that's right, isn't it?
That's right. We're keeping them flying.
So Paul runs a part of Jack's business that is about keeping the Mustang flying and keeping the Merlin going. And he's also a newly qualified Mustang driver. Led his first 5-ship today. You want to talk about what do you do?
Sure. We run our FAA repair station, overhauling the Merlin engine, and also supporting the Mustang community with reverse engineering and manufacturing new parts to keep these aircraft flying. The Mustang itself, the engine is very well supported. We have it basically is about 2,000 hours of manpower to disassemble, clean, inspect, repair all these parts of the engine. And just inside the Merlin itself, there's 14,000 line items. So there's 14,000 parts on that engine, which is a huge amount of pieces for any kind of engine to have, but it all works in harmony, and it's actually a really great design of an aircraft engine. The maintenance of these airplanes, it's actually, you can tell they designed this as a fighter. It was designed to be, a machine to go out there and fight wars, and they didn't really think about maintenance that much as far as they maintain the airplane for years and years and years. As we're in 75 plus years of flying these things, that they were kind of disposable. They were meant to go out and fly and fight, and sometimes you get into the maintenance part, you go, how the heck did they get that part in there, and how the heck am I going to get it out? So there's a lot of that you see in the airplane, but the aircraft was meant, everything was put in there in such a way to keep the aircraft light, to keep it fast, to keep it maneuverable. And the maintainability was maybe a little bit less than desirable, but
just a quickie. I don't know if this works. I've tried to blow a Merlin engine up, melted a piston. Right now we only have 100 octane fuel, and these things were designed for 110 or 115. So you're not supposed to overpower, and I was in a dogfight with another guy, and we all agreed we keep the power down. And I decided I needed more power. And after that, my engine was just running a little rough. And none of us could figure out why. We started replacing magnetos, and I don't know, we just couldn't quite figure it out until the end of the summer. This was at the beginning of the year that I probably overboosted it. And the cylinders up in the front, I guess it's 1 and 6, run a little leaner, I think, typically. And these guys make shorter, I think, connecting rods to get a little less compression on those forward pistons. But I melted one. I mean, I think I went through 3 or 4 rings. The only ring that was left was the oil control ring. But it ran great, except a little bit of vibration all summer. And when we sent it to Roush at the end of the summer to get it looked at, they pulled the oil filter off, opened it up, and said, there's something is making metal. It was just like silver talcum powder in there. So here's the question. These things seem to, even when they're damaged, run pretty darn well. Is that true or not?
that is what we've seen. Yeah, the engine is an amazing piece of equipment that even when it's not in good condition, it still runs very well. And it's still a very reliable engine. And some of the stuff that we've disassembled for overhaul flew in. they was flying until the owner removed it for overhaul, and maybe it had 1,000 hours on it, but it was still in perfect working order, except that there was a lot of damage on the inside, and you would have never known that because it was
what's
flying.
the worst engine you've ever gotten back?
Wheel case damage. When the gears and the wheel case come apart, that's a bad deal.
That's the gear for the propeller?
No, that's the gear that drives your supercharger. It drives your fuel pump, your coolant pump, your oil pump, your camshafts, your magnetos.
That can make a mess?
That makes a mess.
I think, well, anything you want to add as a new Mustang driver, just the experience?
It's a phenomenal aircraft. I mean, you look at it, and it's a great-looking airplane. It flies wonderfully. You read all the stories about it, and you're mesmerized by flying the airplane, and then you actually get in it, and you get to fly it. And when you're flying with an instructor, it's one thing. You always got somebody with you. But the first time you go out and solo the airplane, it's just an amazing aircraft. You get up in the, like I told Jack several times, you take off down the runway, you start climbing out, you suck the gear up, and you pitch out, and you start turning to your destination, your on-course heading. And at that point, I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world, being able to fly this iconic airplane. And thinking about the guys like Bud, when you're flying the old Crows and Gentleman Jim and all these other airplanes, that it's an amazing feeling to have the opportunity to fly these airplanes and honor guys like Bud, and just beautiful machine.
So, I don't know, I think Connie told me, does anybody have any questions for Bud or Jack? Feel free, anybody who's got a question.
Any questions?
They're hot.
If you can ask, okay, there I am. Okay. Where's a question?
Connie, up there, there's a guy with his hand up.
That
Come
one
on
right
down,
over
dude.
there? That one?
That one.
Okay.
The only
great.
one.
The only one. Okay.
So here's my question. I always hear about the dogfight, but I never hear about the afterwards. You kind of mentioned going back smiling, but did you, after a dogfight like that, did you try to link back up with the rest of the unit, or did you go back by yourself, or just kind of what was the process of getting home after having a near life and death experience with another fighter pilot?
Well, no, we were, I guess you say we were more on the celebratory side of it, right? You know, when a guy got a kill, you like to share it with the rest of the guys. And, you know, if you were successful, you got, well, I don't know how to say it, but when I wanted to do a second tour, I came home and then I got into the pipeline and they said, hey, you have to go see a shrink. What? Well, okay. So I go see the shrink, and he has one question. He says, do you know that you do not have to go back in combat? We have thousands of pilots that haven't seen combat yet. And I said, yeah, I know, but I still want to go. And I had a pretty hard time explaining it to my family and things like that, but I could tell you, well, I'm doing it for my country and all this stuff, but it was a camaraderie thing with the guys you knew, and you trained with and flew. And so when a guy shot down an airplane, it was a celebration type aftermath.
Okay, Ron. Okay, I'm up. We're a little bit of delay on our microphone. I have a young man here who has a question. Yes, sir.
So if you could pick one thing that you hated and one thing that you loved about the Mustang, what would those things be?
Did you hear the question, Bud?
No.
What's your
worst thing about the Mustang and the best thing about the Mustang?
Well, it got me back after 480 hours of combat flying. I got home every time, back to England at least. I felt confident in the airplane. You know, when you first start flying, there's fear of the unknown. And then after you get a few combat missions, it's not so bad. And then if you're really successful, and then it seems a little easier. The thing I liked about the Mustang was I felt like me and that Mustang could take on anything Germany had.
But what was the worst thing about the Mustang? What was the most painful part of?
Well, probably the aft fuel tank giving you an unstable airplane full. Some of the groups wouldn't fill it up. They'd fill it up half full. But I always had the guys fill mine. You never knew when you needed a little extra fuel.
Did you ever depart the airplane?
No. No.
Did some guys, if they were ham-fisted, lose control of the Mustang,
oh, yeah.
especially with an aft CG?
Yeah, you could snap them. You could over-G the airplane very easily with a full fuselage tank. If you're diving like this, you're really excited. Somebody's on your tail, and you're trying to pull a few G's. You can't catch it.
Did the Air Force care if you over-G'd the airplane?
I'm sorry?
Did the Air Force care or the Army care if you over-G'd it?
Well, sure. It's just like the engine. If you ran high power, you had to log so many minutes at 60 inches, or so you could take care of it. Same way they would. I think if it went over a certain G, we were supposed to inspect the airplanes. It really wasn't a problem.
Connie, I think you went done?
I think we could stay here all afternoon, and I'm sorry to miss a couple of the questions here, but Jim has a departure slot here going back to work tomorrow. So
you believe that? You believe that stuff? I got to go to work.
Yeah, really. So again, we could all listen all afternoon, and I want to thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen. We're standing here next to the people, not only who flew them in World War II, but Jack Roush and Paul Draper. Their technology, you can ask any Mustang owner out here, and they'll tell you one big reason they're able to fly these airplanes as safely as we are now is because of the things that Jack Roush has dedicated to producing for this airplane. Jim Hagedorn, thank you, and thanks to you and Jack personally for allowing me and Ray to fly your airplanes. So that's a personal note there.
Yeah, don't break it while I'm gone.
I'll try not to. Leave the keys,
Listen,
though.
A big hand for these guys.
Please, everybody, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.